So here we have work together 5-1. Turn around and look here because I want to talk about what we see. What does this look like? Back of a check. That is it exactly. You've seen a check before? Back side of it, they have that spot in there. So we're going to be going through and taking a look at what happens when a business receives a check. So if I go to Don's today and I buy some items and I write out a check and give them a check, what does that cashier do with the check? Have you ever watched to see what they do? What do you mean by scan it? They put it in the cash register, would you agree? Like physically up top, it goes in, they slide it in and it kind of goes up a little bit and it shoots back out. What happens when they do that? The cash register, the salesperson will go through and say that their type of payment they're receiving is going to be a check. And what's going to happen is that cash register is actually going to endorse or stamp the back of that check with the name of the business. So that way, if that check gets separated, the only thing that can happen to that check is get deposited into the account for that business. If you get a birthday check in the mail and you want to go to the bank and you want to cash it, you have to sign the back of it. Would you agree? That's what it's called, an endorsement. There are 3 different types of endorsements that we're going to deal with. And when we look at the types of endorsements, there are some that are okay to use depending on certain situations. So let's say Olivia writes me a check for $75. I get the check. On the back side of the check, I just go ahead and sign my name right away, and then I put it in my pocket. Walk around school, do different things. I put my cell phone in my same pocket, and then I pull my cell phone out. Can that check fall out? So I'm walking around, that check falls out. Trenton finds the check, and he sees that it's made payable to me, and I signed the back of it already. He can bring it to the bank and cash it. Because on the back side of it, all I did was just sign my name. Okay? And that's going to be a blank endorsement, meaning my signature is on there, so anyone can take it and cash it. So the only time I use a blank endorsement is physically when I pull up to the drive-thru or if I walk into the bank and I sign it right in front of the person. Then I'm just going to sign my name and then I'm going to hand it over, because there's nothing that's going to happen between me signing it and handing it over to the bank that somebody else can find and cash that check. A business just doesn't want to put its name on the back of it because they want to make sure that what's going to happen to it is going to get that money only into their bank account. So they're going to have a restrictive endorsement, and a restrictive endorsement says the only thing that can happen is this, and they're going to say deposit to the account of Don's Quality Market and their account number. So no matter who finds it, Dale finds a check that was made payable to Don's and it's endorsed in the back. If he brings it to the bank, the only thing they could do is take that check and put it into their account. The third type of endorsement that we're going to be dealing with is going to be where we actually transfer ownership of it. So, Olivia wrote that check to me for $75, but then I owed that $75 over here to Thomas. So I just signed the back of it to transfer ownership over to Thomas, and then Thomas can take it and go from there. So I'm not doing a blank endorsement. I'm not just signing my name. I'm actually transferring ownership to him, and then he can cash it. A lot of businesses don't want to deal with what's called second-party checks, and that's that example where it was made payable to me and then I transferred it over because it's a little bit hairy. Did they really have it? What's happening with the check? That type of thing. I'm also finding that more and more businesses are less likely to accept checks. Does anyone know why? Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean the money is actually there in the account. The check is bounced.
Check can bounce. That's a great term. What does bounce mean?
You're rejected or something like that because there's not much money in the account.
They could have insufficient funds. Oftentimes, you're going to see information at businesses about insufficient funds at like the checkout at Don's or wherever you go to. It'll say NSF checks will be charged $30 or $40 per item. Have you seen those before? And what that means is that business is telling you if you're writing a check to them and they take that check from you for whatever item that you purchased and they go to the bank and they try to cash it, if the bank comes back to Don's, let's say, and says they didn't have any money in their account, if you bought $10 worth of chips and pizza, that $10 worth of chips and pizza right now is going to be worth at least $40 or $50 because that NSF charge could be $30, could be $40, and then whatever that original cost of the pizza. So now it's going to cost you $50 or $40, depending on what their fee is. So that business charges you extra money because they went through the work of cashing the check. The bank came back and said, nope, it's not good. And do you know that that bank will charge Don's a fee for trying to cash that check when it wasn't good? Do you know that whoever wrote the check, if I wrote the check, they're going to charge me a fee as well? So that fee could be put onto my account. So it would cost, my bank would charge me a $30 fee. Don's would charge me $30, and then the cost of that pizza. So now we're at $70, racking up in fees. So you have to be very careful if you have a checkbook or going through and using a debit card on what they're over. If you went into insufficient funds, how much they're going to charge you in fees, because that's going to be where a lot of banks are going to make their money because people don't closely watch how much they have into their account. So on the back of these endorsements here, we're going to do, this is very similar to 4-1 where we're going to do it once and then you're going to see it again at the end of the chapter. So make sure that you watch out for that. The other thing that we're going to look on the bottom is this is going to be the type of checks that we're going to be referring to in accounting. And my accounting 2 people just happen to be in a simulation. Does somebody have a checkbook here? Probably does. So they're in the middle of an accounting simulation. And this is the checkbook that they're using for their accounting simulation. And what you'll find on the left-hand side is a stub. And the stub is just what stays in the checkbook so we know who they wrote the check out to. Now, for example, when I use my checkbook, we have carbonless copies. So if I write on one check, it leaves an extra copy in my checkbook. So you can see who you made the check out to and what it was for. Businesses will like to use these check stubs. Gives you a running record and it keeps balance of where you're at within your account. So the checks would be perforated off, you rip them out, and then you can dispense from there. So when we look here, there's 2 separate parts to this. There's physically the check on the right-hand side, and then this is the stub. You'll notice that the stub is pre-printed with the check number. This check number here is 79. And it matches check number 79 over here as well. When we have a check that we need to write, it's important that we write it in the correct order. The order of writing out our check would be that we do our check stub first, then we do our check. So we fill out our check stub from the top to the bottom, and then we'll fill out our check from the top to the bottom. And I'll walk you through that because I know not as many people write checks anymore. But it's still important that we know exactly how to fill out that check stub and that check. So that's what we're taking a look at in section 5-1. In section 5-2, we're going to be talking about bank reconciliation. Bank reconciliation is where we go through and take a look at what we have in our checkbook and make sure what we have in our checkbook matches what the bank says that we have in our account. Because it's a possibility for either one of us to make a mistake. So our directions for 5-1 says write the following answers. Write the answers to the following problems below. Your instructor will guide you through the following example. You're authorized to sign checks from Balsam Lake Accounting. Number 1, for each of these situations, prepare the appropriate endorsement. A blank endorsement, special endorsement, to transfer a check to Kelsey Sather, and write a restrictive endorsement to deposit a check to the account of Balsam Lake Accounting. So we're going to go through and fill them in, and Aplia is going to be picky, and we got to make sure we do the right endorsement in the right spot. So this first endorsement right here, where there's just a single line, is going to be where we do a blank endorsement. Now, typically, if this wasn't in Applia, what you would do is you would take your pen, and you would never do this with a pencil, and you would do your signature. So when I go to type in here, you can't type in your own name because there's no way Applia would know all of your names to be able to get it right. So there's just going to be a choice here for signature. I know it's really hard because there's only one option there. So basically, all you would be doing is signing that check, just like that example where I said Olivia wrote me out a check for $75. Now, option B right here, it's going to be the second one on the right, is going to be where we go through and we write a special endorsement to transfer the check to Kelsey. So that's an example where Olivia wrote me the check and then I go ahead and I'm transferring ownership of it from me to Thomas. So what I have to do here on the top line is it's going to say pay to the order of. So that's saying who that is going to be the owner of this check. And then who am I transferring the ownership of this check to in letter B, but to Kelsey Sather. And then below that, you have to sign it. What's going to be true on all of these endorsements is going to be your signature. Because the signature is what releases it from saying that you can go ahead and cash it. Letter C is a restrictive endorsement to deposit the check to the account in Balsam Lake Accounting. That's going to be like what happens when we go to Don's and we write out a check and they put it in the cash register and it prints on the back of it. So what's going to happen on the very first line of our endorsement, it's going to read, for deposit only to the account of. Then it's going to be Balsam Lake Accounting. And then the last line is going to be our signature. Three types of endorsements: blank, special, and restrictive. When you think about, students often get mistakes between our restrictive and our special. Think about restrictive really limits, the only thing that can happen to it is that one thing. So the only thing that can happen to this one check is only deposited into that account. That is instruction number 1. Instruction number 2 says, record the balance brought forward on check stub number 78 to $1,805.75. So I need to look at check stub number 78, okay? And then again, that's that small portion over here. What we have below this solid line right here is going to be where we keep track of our balance, what's in our account, our deposits, our service charges, or other thing that happens to our bank balance. So instruction number 2 tells me to bring the balance forward. So I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to put $1,805.75. Okay, you don't need to worry about a comma and you don't need to worry about a dollar sign. My next instruction, number 3 here, reads, record a deposit of $489 made on October 30th of the current year on check stub number 78. So this check stub is going to be where we keep a running balance of what's happening in our account. So we can see, looking down our check stub, we have our balance brought forward, we have amount deposited, subtotal, other, subtotal, amount of this check, and balance carried forward. We are not always going to use the sections called amount deposited or other, but you always need to put the numbers into the subtotal, so I'll give you that as a heads up. So it did tell me that I need to have a deposit on October 30th, and we're going to put in the month as a number, so I'll do 10, and then the date is the 30th, and then they put an XX in there for the year or the dash dash. So the amount of this check is going to be, or excuse me, the amount of this deposit is $489. Because it's 0 cents, I don't need to type 0.00. Now, I am depositing into my checkbook balance. So am I going to add that 49 or subtract it? Add. So what I have to do is use your handy dandy little calculator, which my son borrowed last night and didn't return to me. So you take your calculator, I'm going to take 1,805.75, and then I'm just going to add the 489. So that gives me an amount of $2,294.75. Would we agree? Did I do the math right? Yeah? Okay, good. So that was instruction number 3. Record the deposit. Now instruction number 4 tells me to prepare a check stub and write out the following checks. Use October 30th of the current year as the date. So it says right here, check number 78 to the corner garage for repairs. I'm going to start with the check stub and fill out the check stub first. At the very top of the check stub, this line right here is going to be where we put the amount of the check in numbers. So I'm going to type in right here, 162. Because that's how much this check is going to be written out for, is $162. The next line is the date. And the date is going to be written in words. So I'm going to write in October as a word, and then the 30th as a number. Notice there's no TH after the 30. The next line on here is going to be who the check is made payable to. And who is this check being made payable to? Corner Garage. Now the for part. You have seen the for part and had to use the for part when you were using your source documents. The using source document line really told you how you were going to journalize it. So it doesn't really matter who this check is made payable to, because we don't have an account called Corner Garage. We don't have accounts receivable or accounts payable Corner Garage. What we have to do, the for part is always going to clue us into the account. It's the reason why the business is writing this check out. And why are we writing a check for the Corner Garage? For repairs. So that's why they told us that. Now, I'm going to bet if you watch your parents fill out a check, they most likely don't fill out the for portion. I like to fill out the for portion, like for example, if my son's bringing a check for lunch money, I want to make sure that in the for part it says lunch money, so that way if somebody finds it, they know what's going to happen to that, and it also clues them in. So that is the top portion of it. Did they tell us anything about an other section that we need to fill out? Nope, so that's going to stay blank. So $2,294.75 plus nothing or subtract nothing is going to be $2,294.75. So nothing goes in here, but we have to put the amount in the subtotal there. Right here it says the amount of this check. So this check is being paid for $162. So that's going to go right here. What am I going to do with that 162? Am I adding or subtracting from my subtotal? I am going to subtract, because the current balance in my bank account is $2,294.75. I'm writing a check out for $162, so I need to subtract those two. The difference is going to go in that bottom line there. And then when I did that, I got $2,132.75. Now, what I need to do immediately is take this amount, the $2,132.75, and put this on the next check stub where it says balance brought forward. I do that before I write out the check. Now I am done filling out the check stub portion. Now I move over and actually fill out the check. I'm going to start in the upper right, and it's going to be where I put in the date. And the date again is October 30th. Normally you would put in the year portion. They just don't have us do this in Applia. Paid to the order of, and we're going to go ahead and make this check made payable to Corner Garage. Directly to the right of where we wrote Corner Garage is going to be where we put the amount of the check in numbers. So right here I'm going to go ahead and put in 162. .00. It's really important that you don't leave the cents off. You got to put in .00 or point dash. Now below here, in the next line is going to be where you would put the amount of the check in words. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that $162 and no over 100. Now, why do we have to have the amount of the check on here written twice? Carly.
Someone doesn't change the number.
Correct. So if we on a check didn't have it written as numbers and as words, could I easily put 10,000 in front of that? Could I put 10 in front of 162? Does that change the amount of the check? Considerably. So by having it in numbers and in words, it would be very hard for me to change the word portion in order to have it match what they had written in numbers.
I did also notice a lot of people put a line after the words.
Yep, and I haven't even gotten to that yet. Okay, so these two have to match up. If they don't match up, then the bank is not going to cash it. Okay, now what Dale said is, do you see all this space between no 00 and here? You really need to, if we were actually physically writing on a piece of paper, draw like a line or something between that so nobody can go ahead and write additional words in there. You also need to fill out checks with pens, except for in Happy Accounting Land when you're working in your simulation, you use pencil for everything. Yes. Why do we need to use pens? So you can't erase it. Should you use your erasable pen? No, that would not be a good idea. Would we agree? So you're always going to fill out a check using a pen, a non-erasable pen, and make sure you fill it out, okay? So we have it written in numbers. We have it written in words. So now we have to go right here. What's the 4? What are we going to put in there? Repairs. And what goes here? Your signature. Truly, if you were signing a check, it would be your signature, not the word signature. Congratulations, that's check number 78. We get to do check number 79 because we're that good. Check number 79 is to St. Croix Supply for supplies for $92. So we need to start on the left-hand side and do our check stub first. So on the very top, we're going to put in the amount of the check in numbers, which is going to be 92. The date is going to be October 30th. We're writing that as words. The to portion is going to be to St. Croix Supply. And what is it for, Trenton? Nice. Now, do we have any deposit information? No. For check number 79? We don't. So I'm going to take this $2,132.75 and put it in the subtotal section. They didn't tell us anything at all about the other section, so I'm going to put that number here as well. How much is this check being made payable for? $92. So I'm going to put 92 in here. And am I going to add or subtract? Subtract, because the amount of the check is going to decrease the value of how much I have in my bank account. So if I subtract $92 from $2,132.75, it should give me $2,040.75. Now, if we had another check stub, I would put this on the next check stub, but we don't have that. So now I can go ahead and fill out the amount of the check. So the check is going to be written out for the date of October 30th to St. Croix Supply for $92. Written as numbers, and then $92 written as words. It's for supplies, and then you would sign it. That is section 5-1. I'm going to check my answer to see how I did. Oh, looks like I did well. Got lots of green check marks. Go ahead and try the on your own, please.